Welcome to the Stormsurf video surf forecast for the week starting Sunday, September 10th. Looking at significant wave heights for the North Pacific Ocean, we don't see a whole lot going on, but the pattern is much better than it was a couple of weeks ago in regards to potential storm development in the North Pacific. Something that almost looks like some sort of a frontal boundary or low pressure trying to set up in the Gulf of Alaska, another system off of Kamchatka, and a tropical system off the Philippines heading northwest of real no interest to our area. Let's get into the details. As usual, start our tour looking at jet stream level winds. These winds up about 30,000 feet help support the formation of gales, and when they do form, help direct their track. We're looking for a trough, that is a dip in the jet, just sort of like there. That would help support counterclockwise flow aloft in the upper atmosphere and down at the surface. And that is the hallmark of low pressure. And of course, low pressure generates winds, winds generate seas. Seas generates swell when it radiates away from the fetch area. And of course, swell makes waves when it hits your beach. So what we have right now is the jet stream, reasonably cohesive, strung across the North Pacific. This is a significant improvement from, let's say, even 3 weeks ago. Roughly on the between the 40 and the 45 north latitude line, a little bit of a trough, not really a trough, but something sort of like a trough in the Gulf of Alaska. Ridge pushing over the U.S. west coast and another ridge over the date line. So no real support for gale development yet. We roll this out, and there's something that almost looks like a little baby trough on Tuesday, but just it's way too pinched. No real winds in there supporting gale development, so we write that off. It makes sort of a cutoff low, upper low north of Hawaii. Maybe there's some hope for wind swell there. But then notice winds start building on Wednesday over the date line. What is that? 120 knot winds, and watch this. Builds to 140 knots as we get into Thursday, and maybe even 150 knots into Friday. Now, still, no real trough, nothing real organized yet. But watch this. As we get into Saturday, it starts falling southeast. Look at that. And that looks like the beginning of a trough. And notice winds now are up to 160 knot. That would support low pressure, maybe even gale development in the Gulf of Alaska. But no, it digs a little bit deeper, and maybe even 170 knot winds start falling into it come Sunday, and then pushing towards the Pacific Northwest into Sunday and Monday. That's a certified trough, certainly capable of supporting gale development. And then a little bit more decent flow and falling further to the south off Japan too, looking much more like fall. This is good news. Next, we take a look down at the surface. Surface level pressure, surface level winds. Of course, there's our little tropical system, but we already know that's going off to the northwest. No support there. Now, remember, the jet was kind of had something that looked like a trough right here, and sure enough, there's like a one closed isobar low, 10, 20 millibars. That's like so high, it's hardly worth anything. High pressure pushing into the U.S. Pacific Northwest, generating a little gradient, and that's making for wind swell that's currently hitting the California coast. Also, there is swell from a system previously off of North Japan, the Kuril Islands, a tropical system that sort of went extra tropical, small swell. It made surf on Saturday and today, now in the head-high range, a little bit overhead up in Northern California, probably less down into Central California, and not even that for Southern California. So anyway, let's take a look and see what's going on here. So you get this little low, a little patch of 30-knot winds, and what is that? So it's 300 nautical miles for every 5 degrees north, so 3 of those, so 900 nautical miles north of Hawaii. Maybe good for some little tiny wind swell out of the north. You know, this is Monday this fetch develops, 25 knot winds. You know, nothing very impressive at all. Notice the tropical system tracking northwest. This little low over here on Tuesday, this is what we got to keep our eyes on. Not so much this one. Remember, this is all behind the Aleutian Island chain. None of that fetch is exposed to the greater Pacific. And watch this little low. It's just going to zoom right across here in the next during the week, supposedly. Also, supposedly, a tropical system off of Baja as well. Now here the low on Friday starts getting organized in the, we'll call it the Western Gulf, 30-knot winds, and we notice that the jet is building in there too, right? 35-knot winds into midday Friday, 45-knot winds Friday night into Saturday, a little patch of 50-knot winds Saturday. Certainly that will get traction on the ocean surface if it were to form. Of course, also notice high pressure here. So you get this gradient thing going on. High pressure, winds circulate around it clockwise. Low pressure, winds circulate around that counterclockwise. The closer the low and the high get together, that starts tightening the isobars. That generates more wind, steady wind, and that's good for generating seas and, of course, swell. And look at this. Into Saturday, 50-knot winds, and then starting to fall southeast and fading. Still pretty solid into Sunday. Oops, and that was it. So potentially gale there. Also notice this. Let's go back and take a look what's going on here. Tropical system. Was that same tropical system that was over here? Doesn't look like it, but also notice another low here. So there's a string of low pressures supposedly forecast to get captured by the jet heading off to the east, maybe beyond 180 hours. And that's, of course, a reach. We don't believe the model's more than, 3 or 4 days out. But things definitely appear to be moving in the right direction, and that is good news. Let's take a look at the wave models here. North Pacific Ocean, again, that little patch of seas associated with some sort of low pressure there, and what was it, 25-knot winds? What is that, maybe 13 or 14-foot seas, and not much more, but sort of falling towards Hawaii. Again, wind swell possible for the islands, not a whole lot else going on. Then we watch this. Here is that little low that pops Tuesday, or started Tuesday off Japan, starts racing off. There, notice tropical system again for Baja, supposedly. And then our low starts developing in the Western Gulf. Was that 22-foot seas? And then we're into 26 or 27-foot seas, and then 34-foot seas. And then we're up to 38-foot seas, supposedly, on Saturday night. That's almost a week from now. And then falling southeast from there. That's certainly good for large swell, but pretty north-angled relative to the Pacific Northwest and California. Swell is swell, we'll take it, maybe even sideband swell for Hawaii. And then you see the next system queuing up off Japan, and this, maybe, just maybe, that's all we have to offer is promises. Nothing for sure yet, because as of right this moment, other than the swell that's hitting and is all but gone, it looks like just a lake until this guy does its thing, other than maybe some wind swell for later in the week for California. No wind swell other than that little thing we saw north of Hawaii. So pretty calm until this happens, but if this happens, that would be a game changer and would sort of put us in a much better position. So just a quick look down south, too. So there was this area of disturbed weather that was Tuesday of last week. Kind of blew up, what was that, 33-foot seas or so. And then we lost one step of the run of the model, but well into the 48-foot range. But we know that it was about 40-foot seas right on the hairy edge of the Southern California swell window Tuesday night last week. Now notice most of this is aim east. That's good for maybe a foot, 1.2 feet at, 17, 18 seconds pushing into California a week later. Southern California, probably nothing for Northern California. So just a little pulse of swell energy. And then that's the only swell that's in the water right now. And then Thursday of last week in the Tasman Sea, a tiny little gale formed, generating 32-foot seas on Thursday night, and Friday up to, was that about 36-foot seas? Good for Fiji, but also some of that energy might filter past Fiji and move towards Hawaii. We're talking small, but notice it pushed pretty well. Just look at the whole tracker. It was the 30-foot seas is what we were most interested in here on Thursday and Friday, but then even residual energy from there pushing to the north. So maybe Hawaii to get a little tiny pulse of swell from that. I think we were looking at maybe 1.6 feet at 16 seconds, something like that. And then we look at the forecast. We'll just sort of blast through this because literally there's nothing going on. This time of year, it's still entirely possible. Look, it's another little something trying to get going in the Tasman Sea, supposedly on Thursday. and then another one after that on Saturday. But over the greater South Pacific, just literally nothing. And we'll get this out to, there we go, 180 hours. So other than the little tiny bits of energy that are forecast for Hawaii and maybe Southern California, certainly Fiji doing okay. But other than that, nothing. Let's take a look long term. Let's find out what's going on with the Madden-Julian oscillation and with El Nino, or really more La Nina in this case. And that helps dictate the long-term weather and swell forecast. As usual, we start inspecting winds in what we call the Kelvin wave generation area. We're looking for what is the MJO doing. And of course, the MJO, Madden-Julian oscillation, in winter months, when it has two phases, the active and the inactive phase. When in the active phase, so there is New Guinea there. This is the equator, West Pacific all here. There's the date line. When in the active phase moves over the West Pacific on the equator, which it does, it moves from west to east, basically goes the whole way around the planet. It helps suppress trade winds in this area, which actually feeds energy up into the jet stream, and the jet stream, of course, then helps feed storm development in winter months in the North Pacific, and then that, of course, helps generate surf. So we're always looking for the active phase of the MJO, especially in winter months. Right now, we see easterly winds over the entire Pacific, but anomalies, differences from normal for this time of year. We see those winds, this per the TAO buoy array, are from the east. That means the inactive phase of the MJO, certainly not the active phase. So that's one strike against anything happening immediately. Then we look at zonal wind anomalies. Okay, so the tick marks, I believe it is, here we go. These two tick marks right here. This is the Kelvin wave generation area. We're going back in time. This is the winds on the whole planet on one page. Blues are easterly anomalies. Yellows and orange are westerly anomalies. In this area, looking down, you just see this blue, blue, blue. Means the inactive phase of the MJO all month of August. Then we get into September. Not only do we have blues, we have purples. This means at a minimum a very strong push of the inactive phase of the MJO, or it could mean a pulse of La Nina. So that does not support a lot of energy moving into the jet stream. So another strike against us. So then we look at outgoing long-wave radiation forecasts. Inactive phase of the MJO, you'd expect to see positive anomalies here. Oranges and reds, we don't see any of that. Very interesting. Nothing in the forecast for the 2 weeks. That suggests the MJO is exceedingly weak. This per the statistical model. We go look at the GEFS model. It's saying the same thing virtually. No MJO presence at all. We look at this chart here, January 2017. This shows you the strength of the active phase of the MJO. We had a pretty good pulse back here in March, but then since then, look at this, very weak. And here we are, July, August, September, the MJO is just dead. For comparison, back during El Nino in January 2015, look at these major spikes. Even January 2016, and we're just dead. The MJO doesn't exist. That tells us something. We take a look at phase diagram charts. So assume you're looking down on the North Pole. The MJO moves from west to east from the Indian Ocean to over the maritime continent, think Bali, over the West Pacific, dateline, under the U.S., across the Atlantic, over top of Africa, back to the Indian Ocean. The heavy dot, which is right there, is where the active phase of the MJO is. If it's inside this circle, it's considered exceedingly weak. The green line shows the forecast, and basically for the next 2 weeks, it's just meandering around in this zone of no energy at all. This per the ECMF model. The GEFS model says basically the same thing, basically saying the MJO is dead. Upper level forecast, the oranges and yellows indicate dryness, the inactive phase of the MJO. Currently over the Central Pacific, this is up at the jet stream level. Forecast to track east into across the equator into Central America through about October 10th or so, but not even, I guess you could call this the active phase of the MJO, but it's so weak it's not even hardly showing any greens, anything, and then a even weaker inactive phase behind that. So just basically a dead MJO pattern. So a dead MJO pattern, neither active nor inactive, typically would be signs of the inactive, of La Nina. Okay, and we believe that is the case. That's what's suppressing the MJO. Just La Nina is building. Let's go look. We'll look at some more evidence of what's going on and see if that is true. So let's take a look at the ocean. Okay, we've sort of explored what's going on with the MJO thing. What's happening in the ocean? Okay, subsurface temperature anomalies. West Pacific here, East Pacific here. Anchor lines off the TAO buoy array. The X's are sensors on those anchor lines. That's how you gather temperature profiles. In the West Pacific, we see warm water. In the East Pacific, we see cooler water. The thermic line, 30-degree centigrade temperatures all balled up in the West Pacific. 28-degree isotherm, making it to 165 west and no further. That suggests all the warm water's piled up in the west. And the 24-degree isotherm, which previously was pushing into Ecuador, is retracted back to about 124 west or so. Now remember the other chart we saw. We saw strong easterly anomalies over here. I mean, not strong easterly trades across the equator and easterly anomalies in the West Pacific. That is what's blowing warm water off to the west and not allowing any of it to generate or build. No still air over here in the West Pacific. No Kelvin waves, no active phase of the MJO trying to push any of this water off to the east. Subsurface temperature anomalies. We see whatever warm water there is, 1 degree, maybe even 2 degree anomalies are all in the far West Pacific. And once you get to about 150 west here, you see a cutoff. Cooler water all east of there, and at depth 3 degrees below normal. Almost looks like a negative Kelvin wave pushing east. Certainly not a sign of El Nino, perhaps a sign of La Nina. Another modeled version of the same data only makes the situation more pronounced. Limited warm water in the West Pacific, much cool water, 1, 2, 3, what is that, 2 to 3 degrees below normal at depth, looking like it's trying to erupt to the surface in the far East Pacific, feeding what probably is a La Nina pattern. Upper ocean heat anomaly data, upper 300 meters of the ocean, so not just the surface, but down 300 meters, what's that, 900 feet or so? Okay, last year, October 2016, we had a pulse of La Nina, had this eruption of cool water, and then the warm water was pulled off to the west. Actually, 2 little Kelvin waves trying to push east. A little bit of warm water buildup off of Ecuador last spring, but that has all since dissipated. And here we go, another push of cool water. Now notice, this cool water is not as cold as last year. In October, it peaked out. We're not there yet. Let's see what happens. Our sense is there is some sort of La Nina developing. It's pulsing now, and this is building. Now, we don't think it's going to be some big, deep La Nina, but we'll get into that in a minute. Sea level anomalies, September 5th. So strip out all the waves, strip out all the wind waves, strip out the tides. Here we go. Peru is right here, South America, Central America, Mexico, U.S., Australia here. And it's right here on the equator that we're most interested in, and really this area right in here. You see -5. -5, these are even -10 centimeters. So the ocean surface is just a little bit lower here. That typically means cooler water at depth. Okay, cooler water contracts a little bit, creates a hole here, and that is a sign of some kind of La Nina activity. All right, let's take a look at actual ocean surface temperature anomalies, and we see cool water off of Peru, not warm water, cool water. Not really cold, just cool. But you can see, we know the trades are blowing pretty strong here, causing upwelling along Peru. We know the trades are blowing quite strong from the Galapagos east out to almost the date line here. Cool water, what's the blue? That is somewhere 1.5 degrees below normal, maybe in pockets here. So a sure sign of La Nina is cool upwelling along, not necessarily along Peru, but from the Galapagos eastward for sure. And especially when you get in the heart of the El Nino monitoring region, which is 120 west out to about 170. Cool water there. So sort of smells like La Nina. The trend for the past 7 days, kind of neutral here along Peru. Yeah, it always kind of upwells there, so that's no big surprise. Little pocket of warm water, but then cool. Mainly upwelling, this interspersed warm and cool, but balanced on the side of cool in this region. That sort of smells of La Nina too. But then you back out, you look at sea surface temperature anomalies, and it's obvious, plain as day. Here you go, blue, cooler than normal, 1 to 2 degrees, just running right along there. We know the trades are nuking along there. We know that there's cold water depth underneath there. We know that that's sort of starting to erupt up to the surface and causing this cool pool. And what that does is that will suppress convection along here. That in turn will start dampening the jet stream, making it not as strong, oftentimes making it split. Though, at this point in time, jet stream isn't looking horribly bad. Why is that? Because this whole pattern didn't even show up till about, 3 weeks ago or so. It'll take a couple of months for this to start manifesting itself in the jet stream. It takes a while when things happen, and it has to be ongoing for a while before the atmosphere will completely respond. The ocean and the atmosphere are coupled, or sometimes not so coupled, and it takes a while for the two of them to start dynamically working together in a cycle. So this basically says, where are we? We're in September, so October, November, to December, January-ish time frame. Maybe that's when the jet stream will start reacting to this. If this pattern holds for the next couple of months, we'll have to see. So let's see how well the ocean and the atmosphere are already coupled. We look at the Southern Oscillation Index, difference in pressure between Darwin, Australia, and Tahiti. And this is a way to look for the presence of El Nino or La Nina. The index as of right now, and you can just sort of see this, it's been positive for basically, there's a couple little stray readings, been positive for 2 months now. Okay, today's reading, 11.41. If it's negative for a long period of time, that suggests the active phase of the MJO. That also, even a longer period of time, suggests El Nino. Positive suggests the inactive phase of the MJO, and over a long period of time, La Nina. 30-day running average. Look at this. So it's been 5, 4, kind of holding there steady, which is just slightly positive above neutral. That's not a big deal. And this guy's 15, then you start getting a little bit interested. But notice it's starting to get a little traction forward, 7.03. I mean, that's not bad, but it certainly hasn't been negative at all for a while. The 90-day running average, okay, so it was basically dead neutral a month ago. Was that, a month ago. And now it's up to 2.74. But when this has to get to 10 or 12 before we really start saying La Nina, an out-and-out La Nina, and even that would be a weak La Nina. So, officially speaking, we're basically neutral, but biased slightly La Nina, but only slightly. When we look at the ESPI index, very much like the Southern Oscillation Index, instead it's different. Instead of pressure north of Darwin, Australia, and then north of Tahiti, it's precipitation. So another way to measure the atmosphere's response to what's going on in the ocean. You notice right in this area, that's where all that cold water is, right? Okay, so the index, negative, minus 1.27. Now, this is a little bit old, September 5th, and I don't know what's going on with their site here. There's some sort of issue happening. But anyway, it hasn't updated for 4 or 5 days. But regardless, negative suggests less precipitation here, right in here, which suggests cooler water, right? Cooler water means less evaporation, means less precipitation above it. So, yes, the atmosphere is sensing what's going on at the ocean, and the index is responding a little bit. Not heavily, not too bad, but this index went down to like minus 2.2 or something, 6 weeks ago or something like that. And this guy typically leads. If you're going to have La Nina or El Nino, this guy leads it by about 3 months. And he's been giving us clear signals for 6 weeks now that dryness is setting up here. And, of course, we know why, because there's cold water here. So some sort of La Nina looks apparent. Then finally, sea surface temperature for the Nino 3.4 region, the main region for measuring El Nino on the equator between 120 west and 170 west. So when was this? April in spring. This spring, temperatures were kind of warm over there. We talked about that. Almost looked like El Nino, but now here we are. Where was it? August, September. We're somewhere in here. Temperatures are falling. They're expected to go down to minus 1.4 degrees below normal in December. That's definitely a La Nina. Not a half a degree, not a degree, but almost 1.5 degrees. So some sort of La Nina projected per the CFS version 2 model, and then supposed to return to neutral by the end, early summer, let's say, sort of time frame. We probably won't see real evidence of this in the jet stream, assuming all this plays out. But what this is suggesting is temperatures are only going to get cooler. In fact, let's go take a quick look at actual temperatures. So along Peru, temperatures have been negative, not strongly negative, half a degree. That's bouncing around. Today's value minus 0.196, a tenth, 2/10 of a degree. That's no big deal. But in the main Nino region, the one you use for monitoring El Nino, La Nina, the Nino 3.4 area, that's out there between 120 west and 170 west. Look at the temperature trend. It is positive half a degree roughly, and then somewhere in July, things started dropping and dropping and dropping. We're down to minus 8.5 tenths of a degree. That's not horribly cold. It's not certainly no super La Nina or anything, but it's definitely trending La Nina, and the trend still looks like it's heading down. Looking at the data we've seen, yes, that appears to still be the case. We have nothing that even closely resembles the active phase of the MJO to try to stomp on the trades. Trades are getting their footing. They're waking up. This is not surprising. We had 2 years of a super El Nino in 2014, 2015. We thought we were getting out easy last winter with a weak, not officially, I don't even think they declared it La Nina. But now it's a double dip La Nina. La Nina definitely looks like it's coming back for this winter. A little bit stronger. You got to pay the price, so we're doing that. Just have to suck it up, make the most of it. The good news is we got a bunch of rain and a bunch of snow last year, so the reservoirs are full. It's just from a surf perspective, La Nina does not do well. It tends to cut energy out of the jet stream, make it split in the northern hemisphere in winter months, which in turn tends to limit storm production in the North Pacific. It makes the storms smaller, more focused in the northern Gulf than out towards the dateline. It tends to make them not be as strong and not last as long, and therefore you get less surf out of it, and certainly it decreases your chances for rain or snow, and whatever you get tends to push it further north. So if you're planning ski trips, looking at the data we're seeing right now, Pacific Northwest, or northern tier states up into British Columbia might be a better call than southern tier states in America. So the good news is there is a gale on the charts. What is that, a week out? Maybe we'll get some surf from it. Hard to say. Too early to know. Otherwise, not a whole lot going on in the Pacific for the next week. Yeah, maybe some wind swell for California, maybe some wind swell for Hawaii. Make the most of what you can get and enjoy it. Hope for the best. Long term, MJO sort of dead, not a whole lot happening. Certainly smells like La Nina is coming. Prepare for it. Do what you can, surf when you can, make the most of it. And that's kind of it. So we'll do it again next week. Same time, same channel. Thanks for watching.